So if you were to Google Lemurians, Mount Shasta, the first two articles on Google are articles I've written.
I think a better way of putting that is if you Google aliens in Mount Shasta, the first thing that comes up is Lemurians.
Lemurians, but I
because if you're Googling Lemurians, you already know about the story. But if you Google aliens in Mount Shasta, you're asking about Lemurians.
Well, what's funny is this article I wrote about Lemurians, and Lemurians are, and I'll get into the whole, this article I wrote about Lemurians, whatever it was, a few years ago, is now day in and day out the most popular article on our website, because if you Google Lemurians, I'm the first person that comes up.
You're the expert.
And and people email me all the time. People send me all the stuff about Lemurians, and it's been like this cool journey as we hop up the Google ranking, because there's really not like a ton of third-party people talking about. Like, there's a lot of people that are really into Lemurians who write about it, but
there's going to be a documentary made about Lemurians, and you're going to be on there as the Lemurian expert.
And I was going to get to this later, but a movie was just made about Lemurians in Mount Shasta, and it is a next level awful. It is next level terrible, and we'll talk about that on another podcast. But Lemurians. So here's the story of Lemurians. Lemuria is basically this ancient civilization that lived, around the same time as Atlantis. And according to this book, it's this book by Frederick Spencer Oliver called A Dweller on Two Planets, written in 1899. He claimed that survivors from a sunken continent called Lemuria, where they sunk into the planet, whatever, hundreds of thousands of years ago, and emerged in Mount Shasta. So in this book is a huge part of the lore of Lemurians. They live in a series of complex tunnels beneath the mountain, and they wear like these white robes, and they live in like this city of gold. There's like a city of gold in the mountain, right? So there's been a ton of quote unquote witness accounts of these mysterious beings. And by the way, I've read some people call them like lizard people. I've seen the most prevalent is they're kind of these tall human looking beings that wear these robes, and they communicate telepathically. So in 1904, British prospector J.C. Brown claimed he found a underground city 11 miles deep in the mountain. And it was full of gold and mummies and shields, and all these people were 10 feet tall. Then Guy Ballard came, and he saw Saint Germain, which we talked about earlier. And a lot of people thought he wasn't seeing this being, he was seeing a Lemurian. So the subsequent witness accounts have been, incorporated into numerous like occult religions, like people that, and by the way, probably over 100 books have been written about this Lemuria stuff. So it is fascinating. There's a lot of different, with all the literature on Lemurians, there's a lot of different stories about them, and sometimes they are conflicting. But
that's crazy.
But basically, these are highly civilized humans of some sort of human nature, and they live underground, and they, come up every once in a while, and that's when people see them, although no one's seen them for 100 years or whatever. And this also goes to the crystals. The crystal, when you go to Mount Shasta, you're going to see a million crystal shops, and crystals are sort of a part. Lemurians use crystals as a communication tool. So you'll hear all these stories. We've heard a lot of these stories where you hold crystals and it sort of gives you like this jolt or this buzzing feeling, and they think that that's Lemurians not only communicating but having healing powers. So that's it. I mean, I could probably go on forever about this.
So here's an off-the-cuff question.
Sure.
Lemurians they supposedly live in tunnels underneath Mount Shasta. Do you think they loan those tunnels to Marilyn Monroe and JFK?
Okay, fair enough. No, it's so the story of this guy who went 11 miles into Mount Shasta, like, wouldn't that be super hard?
Right. Well, when I first read it, for some reason my mind went to, because these are known as kind of underground aliens, if you will. When it said 11 miles deep, I'm thinking he was went down 11 miles. But no, because how the hell could you go down 11 miles into the earth, especially as a prospector in 19? But you're saying he hiked in 11 miles. That's not that big.
Or climbed or whatever.
Doable.
I've never read his, I mean, he was so into this that he brought a team of 80 people to explore the mountain. But as soon in this,
how much of an investment was that?
So he gathered up 80 people to go search for this hole, and when all the people got up in the morning and met at the spot, he disappeared. J.C. Brown was never seen again. Now, was he abducted by Lemurians, and because they don't want him to give away their secrets, or was he full of shit?
Or was he a Lemurian and then just went back down under?
Possibly.
He was a Lemurian in disguise.
But it is fascinating to think that there's Lemuria was like this competing civilization with Atlantis, right? And they were highly civilized, and Atlantis, went extinct because they stayed above ground, probably through the Ice Age, and Lemuria stayed underground and were able to flourish, apparently. But yeah, I mean, so there's like 1 million of these people living in Mount Shasta. How easy could you fit 1 million people in Mount Shasta?
Inside the mountain, you're saying? I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
So I read I heard a debate about how you can technically fit all of the people living on Earth in the 6 boroughs of New York City, fit them physically.
Oh,
and so. Yeah, 1 million people could probably fit in Mount Shasta. It's a pretty big mountain.
Yeah, I guess you're right. They are 10 feet tall, so they do take up a lot of space. But
I picture them as being skinny. So what they take up in height, they make up for in.
Yes, and I also found this cool little tidbit about Lemurians from LemurianConnection.com.
Of course.
Which somehow we rank higher on Google when you Google Lemurians.
We need to find out who writes that, and we need to have them on the pod.
So apparently, Lemurians and Atlanteans had this core belief system that was against each other. One, Atlanteans wanted all humans to evolve at a certain rate, and other Lemurians wanted people to evolve at a different rate. And this ideology resulted in a thermonuclear war, which weakened the continental plates, and that's how the Lemuria was able to go underground, because of the continental plates.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, you haven't touched on the clouds surrounding Mount Shasta and kind of the allure that make the Lemurians have something to do with that.
Well, yeah. So lenticular clouds are these disc-like clouds that float,
kind of UFO-shaped
clouds that come over Mount Shasta, and quite frankly, it's one of the best places to see lenticular clouds on the planet. I mean, there's only a few that consistently give huge lenticular clouds, and Mount Shasta is one of them. Now, because that they look like alien flying saucer discs, and they will come over the mountain, and they'll just hover over it for hours, days sometimes. The thought is they're bringing their spaceship over the mountain, going down into their city, and then the cloud disappears.
Yeah, right? I feel like you can't talk about the story of Lemurians and not mention the lenticular clouds.
Well, so that assumes that, one, Lemurians have these flying saucer type.
And didn't emerge under Mount Shasta from a body of land that went underneath another body of land.
Right. So that and look, and some people believe that these Lemurians aren't from an ancient society, but rather aliens themselves that live in the mountain and conduct whatever the hell they
Highly debated content.
Yes. What's interesting about the Lemurian concept is that the belief is that they warred with Atlantis because Atlantis wanted to change everything when Lemuria wanted to just leave everyone alone. So it does make sense that they would sit in their mountain and just be like, oh, these humans that are just living all around us, we'll just leave them alone, you know? So there's a lot of like weird literature about this that I've clearly read way too much about. But I have been on this weird Lemurian journey as of the last few years because of these articles I've written on our website, and now I'm constantly being contacted by Lemurian enthusiasts, and I think it's just a super cool story, and I enjoy it. And whether you believe it or not, I'm not going to judge you because I just think it's a super cool story.